From MTN, the Montana Television Network, this is Face the State.
Welcome to Face the State. Thanks for joining us. I'm David Parker, MTN Political Analyst, joined as always by MTN's Chief Political Reporter, Mike Dennison. 4 years ago, in one of the closest gubernatorial races in Montana's history, the then Attorney General Steve Bullock squeaked by former Congressman Rick Hill. Now Governor Steve Bullock is running for re-election, and the National Journal calls him the most vulnerable Democratic incumbent. To discuss his first term and his re-election, Governor Bullock is with us today. Governor, thanks for joining us.
Great to be with you, David. Great to be with you, Mike.
So, election year is here. Why should Montanans go to the ballot in November and check Steve Bullock?
Well, I think if you look at where we've gone in the last 3 years, and we've been able to bring Democrats and Republicans together. I mean, J.P. Morgan said we're the most fiscally prudent state in the country. Sure, we've made record investments in our public education system, but we have record results to show as well. Highest graduation rates ever. More people are working in the state of Montana than ever before in our state's history. Personal incomes are on the rise, among the fastest in the country. And we've been able to protect so many things, our public lands, the things that we love about being Montanans. So I think we've made some real great steps in the first 3+ years. And I'm excited about getting to hopefully have the humbling job of being governor for 4 more.
So what are some of the things that you have done that you think have helped the economy, that you talk about doing well, and what are the sort of things that you hope to continue doing to improve the economy in parts of the state where it may not be as good as in other parts of the state?
Sure. And I mean, recognizing in some respects, unemployment rate almost a point still below the national average, and more people working than ever before in our state's history, and those incomes rising. I think that we have taken, and I can look at both sort of the smaller level individual companies and the larger side. I mean, you could go to Butte, CCAST, which is now called Precision Montana. They do high-tech welding and work that even goes on to SpaceX. Well, we've actually partnered with them, providing state dollars, and I think for another 100 jobs. You go to Missoula at ATG. I visited new employees at a company called Avitas in Billings. So we've actually been working business by business to say, what are your obstacles to growth? How can we help? I know that it's estimated that there's about 1,000 men and women working in our forests each and every day right now on projects that, as a result of us, the Forest in Focus initiative, really bringing both public dollars and greater awareness to work on our lands. And then at the higher level, I mean, not just the individual businesses, certainly I think that we've helped create that environment where individuals do want to both invest and move things forward. Being the most fiscally prudent state in the country gives businesses a modicum of comfort that when they come here, they're going to be in a good, solid place. And bringing people together to move many of the priorities forward means that we'll be in a good, solid place. The work that we've done with the private sector, both in areas that we know are going to be high demand, healthcare. We have over 100 different employers working with both our state government and our 2- and 4-year colleges to say that we can help build that pipeline of workers, advanced manufacturing, welding the same. And I think that as we work on a regular basis, I mean, I think we have about 300 companies now engaged in the Main Street Montana project saying, where are the opportunities and obstacles to grow in Montana? All of those has been adding up to, and those are only, I guess, a few of the pieces, but where we are today.
The Main Street project, right, you announced that with some fanfare in 2014. You brought it up today. Can you give me like 1 or 2 concrete examples of how that Main Street project has made a difference in terms of job growth here in the state?
One example, and certainly it's a process, step by step, one example would certainly be that small business and downtown key industry network said, you know what? We need to make it so that as entrepreneurs come, I mean, we are, Kauffman Foundation have said #1 state in the nation for entrepreneurial activity for the last 3 years. But as entrepreneurs come, we need to help guide them through what it takes to build a business. That came right out of Main Street. So we went to work and actually have that one-stop shopping place every single industry that we've spoken with, they raise the need to address workforce issues. And I think in an unparalleled way, actually, that we're actually taking both the private sector, the educational system. The goal isn't always a 2 or 4 year degree. Sometimes it's those industry certificates and moving things forward substantially. Because we do know over the next decade, I mean, we know that we can look at how many people are going to retire and the great growth that we have going on right now, but also that we will need workers. And we need to be addressing that right now.
Let's talk about your agenda for your second term a little bit. A week ago, you announced a big infrastructure agenda. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about other things. First, let's talk about that. How is that any different from what you tried before, which has failed for various reasons, and it doesn't have an immediate impact beyond the $200 million you announced? Then you create this trust within the trust, which takes 5 years to evolve.
Yeah.
Why is this a plan that's going to succeed where the other ones have not?
Well, I mean, it does have an immediate impact. There are thousands and thousands of Montanans that would have been working over this last 2 years had the infrastructure bill not died by one vote. And let's recognize that this is a measure that was, proposed by Senator John Brendan, former Republican chair from Scobie. It passed the Senate 47-3, and it died by one vote. So when we began the infrastructure, my proposal, the Build Montana proposal, we're beginning where we left off last time. Recognizing that we have needs in our schools, our roads, our bridges, our water systems. We've been able to do some stuff without the legislature to address that, but recognizing both we have those needs, and this is from my perspective, a fiscally responsible program that could really move things forward. But we also have to think, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, getting the same results. I think that we as policymakers need to think of ways to address infrastructure needs that really will last long beyond the term of any individual elected official. So that's the proposal for the trust. You're right, money won't start, being dispensed for the next 5 or 6 years. But hopefully then, 5 or 6 years down the line, as legislators are meeting, they'll be able to say, here's some money to address those infrastructure needs.
Now, we have had opportunities in the past, though. I'm still a little mystified as to why you vetoed that bill in 2013, the Eastern Montana infrastructure proposal, which had broad support from both parties. We had plenty of money, and yet you vetoed it. I just don't understand why you did that.
And it was frustrating for me, too. I mean, to rewind, as I think you were covering that session as well, remember that our state constitution requires one thing, literally one thing between the legislature and the governor. We can't spend more than we bring in. Last day of the legislature leaves, puts about 200 bills on my desk. That infrastructure bill was one of them. I had to veto $150 million of cuts and spending to meet that constitutional obligation by the tune of like $800,000, not spending more than we brought in on the balance sheets. So no, it was frustrating for me. I talked about it at the State of the State. I talked about the significant need to have it. But ultimately, we need to continue to both follow our Constitution and maintain, being the most fiscally responsible state in the country. Now, I've had the opportunity. Think about just in the last 2 years, because of the way that we've managed our money, actually lowered interest rates that local governments pay for their water and sewer projects. That alone over time will save ratepayers over $40 million.
But we had $450 million sitting around there. In retrospect, we had $450 million, $500 million after that.
Well, we didn't have $450 million. But either way, we are one of only a few states that don't have a statutory rainy day fund. I think it is important to keep $300 million in the bank. That's what the target was by the time I was done with the vetoes. That's exactly where we were. And that bill actually went to structural balance. Now I know sounds like a big government, confusing term, but that's whether your balance sheets say you're spending more than you're bringing in. Costs $70,000 each state to bring the legislature back. I think they should be able to do their job in 90 days. And there were a lot of vetoes when I get 200 bills on my desk in the last day and say, Bullock, you go sort it out. that I was frustrated about having to veto, and that was certainly one of them.
What did you learn from that experience? I mean, you vetoed the infrastructure bill in the first session. You came within that one vote the second time. What did you learn from all that that's going to change the equation next time around if you get reelected?
Sure. I mean, one thing that I guess a couple of things. One, I think that the legislators hopefully learned that if I say that we need to keep a rainy day fund, that I'm going to insist upon it. And it's important for the fiscal prudence of our overall state. I hope they learn that. Now, what I also learn and continue to learn is where I want to go is bring people together to get things done. If you think of last legislative session, I had a proposal, statewide proposal. Legislature said, no, we're not interested in Bullock's proposal. So actually went back to the table, worked with folks, Democrats and Republicans for that final proposal. Remember what the Speaker of the House said on the last day of the session. He said, when you have a conservative caucus that felt like they lost everything, literally everything this session, this is the only way they could walk out of Helena with a win. This wasn't about wins and losses in Helena. This was about our overall state. And when I think of things like the work that we did together on sage-grouse, the work that we did in passing the Disclose Act, the work that we did on bringing our taxpayer dollars home, Democrats and Republicans to expand Medicaid. I mean, I wouldn't have traded those to try to get a couple of legislators that were upset about that to do the right thing for their communities and their constituents.
Greg Gianforte, Bozeman entrepreneur, one of the creators of Right Now Technology, of course, is your opponent in this election. And he's going around the state saying his business know-how is essential to fix Helena. How would you outline the key philosophical differences between yourself and Mr. Gianforte?
Well, I think we still have a lot to learn about actually where he stands in many respects. But as I look at, one example would be the tax proposal that he put out. It ends up about $200 million a year over the next 2 years. Ultimately, we've seen this model before, especially then where the cuts go to those that are the wealthiest. We've seen this model before. You don't have to look far. Go to Kansas, where literally they ended up having to shut down their public schools early one year because they couldn't even meet those revenues. We've seen that in Louisiana. I think we have a philosophical difference there. I think we have a philosophical difference on the importance of public lands. I mean, he said, well, transfer isn't attainable at this time. I've said, no, this is an essential part of our economy and our heritage as Montana. Those transfers won't happen on my watch. I think we have fundamental and philosophical differences about here we are in Bozeman, Montana, where a non-discrimination ordinance was proposed, and as a private citizen, he weighed in and said, this could be bad for business. Well, look at what's happened in Indiana. Look at what's happened in North Carolina. We have a fundamental difference about state dollars for public schools. I think public schools are the great equalizer in our society. It takes every single one of us where we are and provides them the opportunities. It doesn't mean that people shouldn't go to private schools. Encourage parents to figure out what their best fit is, but the question is, does the state provide funding for that?
One of the things that you just mentioned in one of your philosophical differences, and when you started this conversation, is that the successful rising graduation rates. So I'm going to ask you a question that I asked Denise Juneau when she was on the show, which is this. How do we deal with the fact that while our graduation rates are going up, we have a number of students that go into the college system here in Montana that take remedial courses? So does that actually suggest that the graduation rate, although it's going up, that they're actually learning anything?
No, I think that we address it in a number of different ways. And one of which is, we have been, higher education is constitutionally separate, but we have been working so well, I think, with our colleges and universities. One is the Ed Ready proposal, or it's actually the program that's addressing these students' needs even before they get out of high school. I can say that we've about doubled the number of high school students taking college classes while still in high school today. What that provides them the opportunity to do even for those students that didn't think that they were college material, as well in high school, start to see what that takes. So to get some of that rigor in there early and often. So from that perspective, I think that we are taking strides, and we know, like students that participate in dual enrollment classes, less likely to actually, I mean, their GPAs, even for those B and C high school students, GPAs are better in college, their retention is better, and their path to graduation in a shorter period of time is better. So I think that we are taking steps. That doesn't mean we don't have a heck of a lot more to do, and working together we'll do it.
Okay.
We're going to talk about the campaign a little bit more, and before we do that, we're going to show an ad that this not your campaign ad, it's from the Democratic Governors Association funded group attacking Mr. Gianforte.
Focus on this. A millionaire from New Jersey is desperate to be governor of Montana. Greg Gianforte, on a mission to buy this election. He bankrolled a DC front group that's now running dishonest ads attacking our governor, Steve Bullock. Gianforte's agenda? Cut taxes for millionaires like himself, but do next to nothing for families like yours. So out of touch, he even criticized seniors who retire and depend on Social Security. Greg Gianforte. He's focused on his fortune, not your future.
Now, of course, this is not your campaign's ad, but your campaign has insisted on always calling Mr. Gianforte a New Jersey millionaire. I just want to talk about that a little bit. I mean, he's not from New Jersey, he's from Pennsylvania, and he's lived here for 20 plus years. He's raised his family here. He started a business that employed hundreds of people here in Bozeman. Why is this something that your campaign is insisting upon? It's almost like you're saying, I can't win unless I portray him falsely as an outsider.
Look, he made millions of dollars in New Jersey. He then came to Montana and made hundreds of millions of dollars. I think it's a wonderful thing that we have a state that someone like him can move here and make hundreds of millions of dollars. I think the campaign will be about what kind of Montana we want. And do we want to remain the most fiscally prudent state in the country? Do we want to be making investments in education? Are our public lands, our diversity important?
One of the points that the Gianforte campaign makes is that Greg Gianforte is a self-made man. He made his own money, and because of that, and this is actually not dissimilar from the argument that Donald Trump is making, that he's not bought by anyone because he's his own person. So isn't that a powerful argument for putting him in Helena, because he could combat those special interests more effectively than, say, conversely, you, who's had to go out and raise a lot of dark money when you're head of the GGA and take all this special interest money? I mean, this is the argument that they're making.
Yeah. I mean, I think, first of all, people know exactly where I stand, and they've seen me in public life now for 7 years and know exactly, where my lines are and where I'll work together. So they know where I'm coming from. What they could know about him is, frankly, where he's invested his dollars in the past, and invested in groups that, like the Family Foundation, that oppose the Disclose Act, investing in many of the groups that opposed many of the steps that we took in the legislature, I think says a lot. Now look, he's certainly free to spend as much of his own money as he wants to, and already is spending a heck of a lot of money in that respect. On the one hand, it'd probably be good for our economy if he spent it all. But on the other hand, I mean, let's recognize that not since the days of the Copper Kings we had somebody with this much wealth saying that this is the seat I want.
But how is that any different from you're being head of the DGA and help them raise a lot of money, which was your job, and the DGA is going to spend a lot of money on this race, as perhaps the RGA is too. I mean, there's going to be a lot of money spent on your behalf and money spent on his behalf. Why is the money spent on his behalf any different from the money spent on your behalf?
Well, I missed part of that. Why is it any different? I mean, look, DGA will run ads, certainly as the RGA will. I have no control over that. He's also giving to the RGA to ultimately provide dollars back, meaning, I shouldn't say that, he's donating to that one of those PACs that he's been denouncing as well, the RGA. So I think it underscores another of the reasons, though, that it is good that we did come together, Democrats and Republicans, to pass the Disclose Act, saying if you're going to spend money on elections, we ought to know where that money's coming from.
Conrad Burns recently passed away, and he was from Missouri, all right? And then Judy Mars, born in Montana, many people say not a very good governor. Are you better as a governor because you were born here in Montana?
I think I'm either better or worse as a governor, and that's up to the people to decide. I mean, ultimately, I've worked darn hard before becoming governor, spent as much time in the private sector as I have in public service. I'm proud of the work that we've done in public service, and ultimately that'll be up to the voters to decide.
I also wanted to ask you about your record with your lieutenant governors, which hasn't been brought up that much in the campaign, but it may be. You're on your third lieutenant governor. A couple of them have left under various circumstances. What does it say about your judgment as far as picking people who are your top confidants?
Yeah. I mean, Senator Walsh left to run for the Senate. John Walsh did, and Angela McClain, I mean, it certainly, she decided to leave, and she did some great work, respect that. It doesn't always fit. Fits don't always work in business. It doesn't always happen in government. So I respect that. And I think Mike Cooney is somebody that, he was the first person I worked for in public service. He's doing a great job. I'm taking that Main Street Montana work. And as each of the industry sectors come back, and Mike's spearheading that on the state government side. So I think that we're well positioned, excited about not only the election, but more than the election, what we can be doing over the next 4 years.
Well, the emails that have come out, it looks like there was disputes within your administration between you and Angela McClain. So let me ask you this. Was Angela McClain a good lieutenant governor? And if somebody called you and asked for a recommendation for a job, would you recommend that they hire her?
I think that, ultimately she did some real good things. It wasn't a good fit between her and I. Now, that doesn't take away anything from who she is or what she does in the future.
Let's shift gears a little bit here and talk about energy policy. There's been a lot of talk about coal and coal strip, and you weighed in on this, and you've talked about how you want to keep the coal strip plants operating as long as you can. If that's the case, shouldn't we be doing everything we can to defeat the Clean Power Plan?
Well, a number of things that you raised in there. First of all, when it came to the Clean Power Plan, the initial draft, I brought people together and said, we can meet this. When the final plan came out, it was unfair to Montana. I said it is unfair, and I support the litigation going forward. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't bring the right folks around that table to try to figure out how to meet this if this is impacted, or if this stays in force. It's now on hold. When it comes to coal strip, coal will be a part of our energy future. We have 28% of our nation's reserves. So with coal strip, and there's been a lot of talk out there, one of the things that I want to do is bring folks together and say, what is the future of that? But we also have to recognize that it's not just coal strip or coal that's our energy future. I mean, we have incredible wind opportunities. We have geothermal opportunities. We're working with solar companies right now. We have been an exporter of energy, and we have those opportunities to both create good jobs and keep our clean air and clean water in the state.
National Geographic just came out with an article in the last day that says in 2020, 20 years faster than estimates, that all the glaciers are going to be gone in Glacier National Park. I mean, if coal is a part of our future, we might have to rename the park formerly known as Glacier Park. I mean, what's the consequence of our coal economy here in the state in terms of other parts of Montana?
I mean, coal is a part of our future even under the Clean Power Plan, right? It would have gone from 40% to 30%. And I think that there's been more technological changes in your phone over the last 5-6 years than how we've utilized coal in the last 50 or 60. So certainly there are steps that we can take and we should take. And I am one that I do believe our climate's changing. I think it's human caused. Even if somebody doesn't, the financial markets do. and that's going to impact how things go in the future.
So what is your administration doing or hoping to do to plan for the transition for like people who work at Colstrip or at other coal operations throughout the state?
Well, first I want to actually work with the owners of Colstrip. I mean, when it comes to 1 and 2, they're completely owned by folks beyond Montana's borders, and we're dependent on what happens there. So bring them together and say, what are your plans for this? Because ultimately it will be the private sector that decides what's going to happen with them. And then we will do work on both the overall energy economy and providing some great opportunities for people.
And the Republicans, of course, Gianforte and others, are basically attacking you, saying that you're not strong enough for natural resources, you're not strong enough for oil, gas, coal, timber, et cetera. What do you think when you hear that line of attack?
Well, I think it's, I mean, look, the silly season has begun. There's been more coal produced on average in the first 3 years of my administration, each year annualized, than since the days of before Ted Schwinden. We've actually worked with our natural resources. I mean, when it comes to timber, there's more things happen in Montana, certainly, than a lot of the other states, and we're working with our mills, with collaboratives, to not only get logs on trucks, but to protect our watersheds. So I expect to hear all kinds of things that certainly would make it so that my kids don't recognize who I am. Unfortunately, that's part of the, I guess, the thing that I signed up for.
We've got about 30 seconds or 45 seconds left. I have one last question. You said climate change is something we have to worry about. It's happening. It's human caused. Do you consider yourself an environmentalist?
I consider myself a hunter, a fisherman, sportsman, a conservationist, certainly. I mean, I was raised hiking and fishing around the hills. Our clean air, our clean water is really, really important.
So you will fight hard in a second Bullock administration to protect those things from Montana?
Certainly, but as I have been fighting, I mean, I'll fight to actually bring people together to move this state forward, as I will to move our educational system forward, as I will to help create jobs, and to protect everything that we love about this state.
Well, the silly season is here. The election's ongoing. It's surely to be one of the most expensive races in Montana's history. Governor, thanks for joining us on the show today. Next time, 2 weeks, we'll be talking about the state legislature. Do the Democrats have a chance to actually pick up seats? Will they in the House? What kind of money is going to be spent in that particular race? Mike and I will be joined by Democratic strategist Tim Warner and State Representative Matthew Monforton. Governor, thank you again for joining us on the show, and have fun as you go throughout the state and campaign.
Great to see the both of you.
Good seeing you. This is us for Face the State. Thanks.
You've been watching Face the State, a presentation of MTN, the Montana Television Network.